Hello, it is TexAgs Rewind presented by T-Mobile. T-Mobile, a proud sponsor of this awesome show, my favorite show, and they want to remind you to visit T-Mobile.com/acrossamerica to learn more about how you get value and coverage with T-Mobile. All right, so what a show today. Brian Kelly to LSU, big conversation piece. We spent some time during the Go Hour evaluating if we think it's that big of a deal or not. I tend to think it's whatever. LSU gets who they want. They're usually a pretty good program. So whatever, but big fish, I don't think it's going to matter for what A&M is doing. Charean Williams talked about the Aggies in the NFL. Our Pro Football Talk Aggie friend, Billy Liucci, joined the show for a moment. Talk about Evan Stewart. That's right, huge news last night. Another 5-star says, I'm going to Aggie land. Thank you very much for that. And we talked some Aggie hoops there with our buddy John Pugliese. It is TexAgs Rewind.
Well, I wonder if there's any outrage to Brian Kelly not Brian Kelly, but oh, crap. What's his name? That went to USC from Oklahoma.
Oh, Lincoln Riley.
Oh, yeah. All I kept thinking was dry fit. Lincoln Riley. I wonder how much outrage there's going to be.
He can use the plane, apparently, anytime he wants for his family.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to negotiate that with Brandon here.
And then just some of the others. I mean, it's just those two. Mel Tucker. You know, there's been so many big raises. Now, Jimbo's may not be in the top 10 highest paid coaches before this is all over.
Yeah.
And I keep tweeting, hey, does this piss you off, Dennis? Are you pissed off at this guy and this guy? Because every time I read, not every time, frequently when I read something about Dennis Dodds, especially by Dennis Dodds on CBS Sportsline, when he's doing his top 20, he frequently brings up Jimbo Fisher's contract. Like he's the only guy making a lot of money. Well, now, there's a lot of coaches making even more than him.
Well, there's a Billy tweeted out yesterday that apparently LSU offered Jimbo $13 million for 8 years.
Wow. That's $4 million a year more than if you, of course, well, I don't even know how much more that is because his $9 million is over 10 years, $9 million a year for 10.
Right.
And he turned it down.
Well, he just didn't want to leave. Yeah. He didn't want. And I look, I don't care if Lincoln Riley or Brian Kelly is making $15 million a year. I don't care what other people make. If that's how you want it, I think it's more of a waste of money to spend money on a coach that doesn't work out for you. So the Hermans and the Sarks of the world, and maybe Lincoln will be atrocious at USC. Maybe he'll hit a home run. Maybe Brian Kelly will be exactly what LSU wants. However you want to spend your money, that's fine. But for you to point fingers at one guy and then all of a sudden be okay for your guy, to me is where I have an issue.
Well, I've said before, it's a caste system. And, the national media, and I've been part of it. Certain schools, if you do one thing, it's okay.
Right.
Others, then it's an outrage. I will say this, and I've said it all along. If you find the guy that you think is a successful coach and can be good for you, you might as well do whatever you can to bring him in and lock him up. You just mentioned how much money a program can spend by firing a guy and looking for somebody else. There's a handful of elite football coaches. And if you get one, you're going to have to hold on to it. And then, there are those that are going to say, oh, you should be spending this money somewhere else. Look, most of these programs pay, the university's not paying anything.
Right.
It's private donations and things like that bump it up. And then there's like, well, they should spend the money. They should be donated somewhere else. No. If you've made the money, you have the right to spend it, donate it, however you please, to whoever you please.
Who is Zach Barnett?
I'm not sure.
He was going at Billy a little bit yesterday. Just I don't know. There's just the amount of people who take who was it? Colin Cowherd the other day. And then this Barnett guy wondering why Stewart picked A&M over Texas, and Damon Demas only
probably
had 15.
Never been here.
But Cowherd all in on Team Sarkisian for some reason. Look, worry about you. We're doing just fine here, and I do got to give you some props on something because I believe you were the first. Said that was a lot of anger there. You were the first one to tell us Brian Kelly would be who you would call, and this was over a month ago. You said this, that Brian Kelly is the guy, and you on several occasions on this show and on other shows said that's who I would keep my eye on because he's one guy that I think you can pry out of a school.
Yeah, when I was a national writer, even back then, there was talked that Brian Kelly was frustrated at Notre Dame because of the entrance requirements. So he had a couple of hurdles, a couple of obstacles when recruiting that most big-time programs, football programs, don't have. And he was always looking around for the right situation. He wasn't going to leave for just anybody.
Right.
But I always felt like, first of all, he's an elite coach, and secondly, and he had a great job, a high-profile job, prestigious. But he was frustrated, and I always thought that if the right job came along, that he could be convinced to leave. And what they're reportedly paying him, and at a place like LSU, that's the right opportunity.
I'm going to do something that I don't think people should do, but I'm going to pretend like I'm Brian Kelly. I don't leave for LSU. All right, Charean, top 3 Aggies in the NFL. Let's start with number 3.
Yeah, it was a hard week. There just weren't, frankly, many outstanding performances, and we're going to go with Jake Matthews just because we don't give offensive linemen much love at all. And the Falcons won 20-14, and suddenly you look, and they're right there in that playoff picture. The team only gave up 1 sack, and he's played nearly every snap this season, has played pretty darn well for a team that now has 5 wins. 2, we're going to go with Myles Garrett. Lost to the Ravens, but he had 5 tackles. He had a sack early in that game. Really was pretty good against them. 2 quarterback hits and a pass defense. And, oh, by the way, he leads the NFL in sacks, the leading candidate for Defensive Player of the Year. I voted for him for my mid-season Defensive Player of the Year, as I think most people did. I saw him on most people had him as the mid-season Defensive Player of the Year. Really cool. He can win that. Vaughn's never won and finished second one time. Number 1, we're going to go with Josh Reynolds. How about that? The Titans should have kept him. They had no receivers on Sunday for Ryan Tannehill. Instead, they were playing with a bunch of Jags, and Josh Reynolds went out and had 3 catches for 70 yards and a touchdown for the Lions on Thanksgiving Day. Just got there not very long ago. But he is back with Jared Goff, and those two have a connection now. And I think we're seeing he's a better receiver than what the Titans gave him credit for, making him inactive most weeks. It perhaps wasn't a good fit, but the Rams didn't give him much of a chance because they had better receivers before him, but he's getting that chance with the Lions and showing that he can be a number 1 guy.
That's something that they've been, obviously, our guys have been writing about it. We've been talking about it for a couple months now. It's, it really sparked up a little bit before the Alabama game, and then you got. But keep in mind, this is a dogged recruitment by this staff because they at one point he had committed to Texas, then he was thought to be going to Florida or Alabama. A&M wasn't really his picture, but Damian Craig and Jimbo Fisher and the Aggies stayed at it because Evan was such a priority. I mean, we don't even need to waste any time talking about how big a glaring need he fills. You think about a talent like him. I mean, go back to it. They just missed on a JoJo Earl who went to Alabama. They just missed on Jalen Waddle. This has been the kind of receiver that Jimbo Fisher has been coveting, since he got here. Jalen was in that first class, like literally since he got here, trying to get an explosive playmaker that can make plays all over the field, mind you, all over the field. He's just as good a receiving prospect as you're gonna get. And to come out of the state, you Garrett Wilson, A&M got in there late, Jackson Smith and Jigba. There's a long list that I think Evan Stewart is right in there in that type of group of playmaker. And look at how they've all produced in college. I mean, these guys, when you're that talented, you're going to be a big-time college football player. And Evans, he's a really bright kid as well. Personality, I think he comes in and has an instant impact from day one, and most importantly, provides something for this offense that they've so sorely needed, and that's a true home run threat at wide receiver, and a guy that's coming in here, in my opinion, with a lot of polish. So they just stayed at it. David, he came to the Alabama game. He and his family fell in love with everything about it, came back for Auburn, same experience, and got close with the guys in the class, and here we are. The timing of it was was a bit surprising, just kind of out of nowhere on a Monday night. So that kind of made it, I think, even that much cooler because it just sent shockwaves throughout the recruiting world.
One of the things I heard you say on the at-home visit was that this is a guy that can be a home run threat on day one. This is a guy that you expect to contribute pretty quickly.
Absolutely, I do. I mean, like I said, I think if he comes in with the right mindset, which all accounts he will. He's that kind of kid. I think if he comes in, he's a very likely day one starter in a receiving core that has a lot of guys that have played, but not a lot of proven, like over time proven commodities. I think he can come in and start by the time his freshman season begins. Look, again, this guy's like the receiving version of Myles Garrett, or if you want to stick to just receiver, he's Christian Kirk, that level of talent at the position. So yeah, he walks in and I think he plays day one and makes a major impact.
Billy, the power of the visits to Kyle Field this year, it's always an electric place, but I feel that there was an atmosphere this year that was very conducive to dominating these kids' minds when they get here and like, oh my gosh, this is where I need to play. Look at this place. How much do you think that played a role?
I think that's played a role in this entire class. When you go back and look back at it, it's funny how these seasons work, right? And again, I don't want to waste too much time. I want to talk about what this class is right now and where it's headed real quick, David.
Yes, sir.
But for a second, let me tell you, people will look at the record and they are 8-4. So much of recruiting, there's so many other things that go into it. But if you want to just go with the record, so much of the recruiting process is the build up to the season. What is your team thought of? And then it's how do you arrive at whatever the record is? And yes, of course you want to go 12-0 or 11-1 every year, but it's about the path to getting there. And so for A&M, they were ranked really high. They kind of fell off for 2 weeks. And then all of a sudden, in front of 105,000, including Evan Stewart, they beat Alabama. And then you rode that wave for three more games or four more games? 3 or 4 more games with a bye week in between. So it was 4 or 5 weeks of riding that wave of the biggest win in college football this year. And then you get another home game against an Auburn team that ended up losing Bo Nix and fading. But at the time, you're playing the 11th ranked team at Kyle Field. You beat them in pretty dramatic, epic fashion, this time with defense. And it's a whole nother week. So really, when A&M hit the fall off there at the end, it's really the last 2 weeks of the season. So throughout the season, they were in the spotlight. They were doing noteworthy things. They were giving kids reasons to want to come. And I think the recruits also maybe a lot better than the fans because they're not as emotionally invested, so they don't have that rage and that just raging disappointment and anger when the team loses and that feeling of devastation and dejection. They're looking at it going, yeah, they lost their starting quarterback and they've had a lot of injuries. And they're also going, well, I'm not going to Arkansas. I'm not going to Mississippi State or Ole Miss. And then you look around at what was going on in Baton Rouge with LSU, in Austin in year one under Sark, and then with what happened at OU. This is prime time for A&M to recruit at an elite level. And yeah, it would be even better if you'd be over here gearing up for the playoffs, but there are 4 teams doing that. And A&M's recruiting ranking is right up there with the top 2 in that group, in Alabama and Georgia right now.
Against Wisconsin, they started out hot. They did some really good things. They put themselves in a position to take the lead early. They struggled with Wisconsin's ability to slow the game down. Wisconsin runs a lot of screening actions. They do a really good job of making it difficult on opponents' defenses because they really value matchups, and they took advantage of a lot of matchups that they felt were put them in the best position to win. So that first game was a bit of a struggle after the first 15, 16 minutes. But then there was a good bounce back against Butler. They started hot against Butler. Quentin Jackson has cemented himself as as a guy who actually potentially fills a role on an NBA roster. Q does some things because of his athletic ability and his ability to lock in on defense that has separated him from where he was prior to this year, his first couple years in an A&M uniform. And Butler made a bit of a comeback. It was closer than it probably looked on paper. I think it was 57-50, closer than it actually looked. But this team has started to figure out that they have talent. This team has more talent than they've ever had under Buzz Williams. And then there was the separation of about the last 16 minutes against Notre Dame of a 14-point deficit. I think the one thing that you saw, and this is such a kudo to Buzz and his staff, is they completely changed the way that they wanted to play to win that Notre Dame game. And they haven't done that in the previous 3 years. I would liken it to the fact that they now have more talent, David, than they've had before. They can go to some different lineups, but they went small. Aaron Cash, I know he didn't play a ton of minutes and he fouled out in his time, but Aaron Cash was the separator, in my opinion, because of their ability to guard 1 through 5, switch a lot of stuff, put pressure on the offense. And I don't think I can make this point enough, David. Texas A&M, in those 3 games at the Maui, they had the most talent in every game that they played. This is a talented A&M team for it's the first time. This is a talented SEC roster.
Thank you all for watching this incredible production that we call TexAgs Rewind, presented by T-Mobile. We want to recommend and suggest and ask you to like, comment, subscribe, share, all the good stuff. It's a great one. Thank you so much for watching.